The massive screens in Earth's Global Defense Command Center lit up with warning signals. Admiral Thomas stood at the center of the room, his weathered face illuminated by the red glow of emergency alerts. The impossible had happened. Alien ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. Multiple vessels detected beyond Pluto's orbit, announced the young officer at the radar station. Size and configuration unknown. Nothing in our database matches these signatures. Thomas straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. Humanity had prepared for this moment for over a century, but now that it was here, the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen displayed a fleet of ships that looked nothing like the sleek vessels humans had designed. These were enormous angular structures that seemed to ignore every principle of aerodynamic design. They moved with a precision that spoke of advanced technology, spreading out in a formation that was clearly military in nature. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Baker. "The message is, it's in English." Thomas raised an eyebrow. That was unexpected. "Put it through." The voice that filled the command center was artificial, clearly translated by advanced software. "Attention primitive species of Sol 3. This is High Commander Vex of the Galactic Empire. Your system has been chosen for integration into our magnificent empire. Prepare for immediate surrender and submission to Imperial authority." The room fell silent. Decades of preparing for first contact, and this was how it happened, not with an exchange of knowledge or peaceful greeting, but with a demand for surrender. "Open a channel," Thomas ordered. He adjusted his collar and stood straighter. "High Commander Vex, this is Admiral Thomas of Earth's Global Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization, but we must decline your demand for surrender. Perhaps we could arrange a diplomatic meeting to discuss." Silence. The alien voice cut through. "Your primitive attempts at negotiation are unnecessary. The Empire does not negotiate with pre-FTL species. You have achieved spaceflight within your system, which qualifies you for integration rather than elimination. This is an honor. You have 48 Earth hours to prepare your surrender documents." In the tense silence that followed, Thomas exchanged looks with his senior staff. They had all trained for various first contact scenarios, but this level of arrogance was unexpected. The Empire clearly had no idea what they were dealing with. "Sir," spoke up Colonel Rivers, head of intelligence, "our deep space telescopes are getting clear images now. Their fleet, it's big, but not as big as we expected from a galactic empire, counting approximately 200 ships." Thomas nodded slowly. The Empire was probably used to subduing primitive worlds with a show of force. They likely hadn't bothered to send a full invasion fleet, expecting an easy victory. That would be their first mistake. "High Commander," Thomas spoke again, his voice calm and measured. "I strongly urge you to reconsider this approach. We would much prefer peaceful relations, but if you insist on this course of action, we feel obligated to warn you." Laughter echoed through the command center, artificial, translated laughter that somehow managed to convey complete dismissal. "Warn us? Your species hasn't even achieved faster than light travel. What possible warning could you have for the Galactic Empire?" Thomas signaled to Colonel Rivers, who nodded and began transmitting a prepared data package. "We're sending you information about our species, specifically our military history. I suggest you review it carefully before making your final decision." "Your primitive conflicts do not interest us," Vex replied. 48 hours, Admiral. Not 1 minute more." The transmission cut off, but Thomas knew their data package had been received. He turned to his staff, noting the determined looks on their faces. They had all trained for this, prepared for this, hoped it would never come to this. "Begin Operation Dark Shield," he ordered. "Activate all defensive systems. Alert the Luna and Mars bases to go to full readiness. And send word to all deep space installations. Protocol Omega is now in effect." As his orders were carried out, Thomas walked to the window overlooking the sprawling military complex below. Somewhere up there, The Empire's ships were preparing for what they thought would be an easy conquest. They had no idea that humanity's visible technology was just the tip of the iceberg. "We warned them," he murmured to himself. "God help them. We tried to warn them to run." The next 48 hours would change the galaxy forever. The emergency meeting room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains was filled with tension. Military leaders from every nation sat around the massive table, their faces lit by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Admiral Thomas stood at the head of the table, looking at each face in turn. "The data package we sent them has been received," he announced. "As expected, they haven't bothered to look at it yet. Their arrogance will work in our favor." General Reed, commander of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward. "Have they detected any of our hidden defenses?" "No," replied Colonel Rivers, bringing up a tactical display. "Their scans are powerful, but basic. They're looking for obvious military installations, visible weapons. They haven't found anything interesting because we've kept everything that matters hidden underground or disguised as civilian structures." Dr. Wells, the head of weapons development, pulled up another display showing the Empire's fleet positions. "Their ships are spreading out, preparing for what they think will be a simple show of force. They're following a standard pattern. We've seen it in their previous conquests of less developed worlds." "Then it's time for the real warning," Thomas said quietly. He pressed a button on the table, and a new hologram appeared. A complete battle plan that had been prepared years ago for exactly this situation. "Operation Truth and Consequences is now active. Begin transmission." Across the vast distance of space, the Empire's command ship received a new transmission from Earth. This time, it wasn't just text or voice. The message began with footage from World War I. Trenches, machine guns, the first tanks rolling across battlefields. It moved quickly through World War II, showing the rapid advancement of military technology in just a few decades. The transmission continued, displaying the Cold War arms race, the development of nuclear weapons, the space race. It showed modern warfare, precision strikes, stealth technology, cyber warfare. But then it showed something more. The classified recordings of what humanity had been developing in secret. "Their ships just went to battle stations," reported Officer Baker through the comm. "They're finally watching our transmission." The Empire's leaders saw massive underground facilities where experimental quantum weapons were being tested. They watched recordings of ships disappearing completely from sensors using technology that didn't officially exist. They saw defensive systems that could redirect the energy of an attack back at its source. "Transmission Package 3 is ready," announced Dr. Wells, "showing them what we can really do." The next part of the message revealed the true nature of Earth's defenses. What the Empire had dismissed as primitive satellites were actually networked weapon platforms. The simple mining operations on the Moon and Mars were covering massive military bases. Every asteroid mining facility was armed and armored. Finally, Admiral Thomas recorded the last part of the message himself. He stood straight, his voice clear and firm. "High Commander Vex, you see now what humanity is capable of. What you've witnessed is only a fraction of our military capability. We've spent centuries fighting ourselves, perfecting the art of warfare in ways your empire cannot imagine. We've united not because we had to, but because we chose to. We've hidden our true strength not out of fear, but because we hoped for peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We don't want war. We've seen enough death and destruction in our history. That's why we're warning you one last time. Run. Take your fleet and leave. Because if you force this conflict, we will not show mercy. We will not stop at defending ourselves. We will show you why every advanced civilization should fear a species that has spent its entire history learning to fight and survive." The transmission ended with detailed scans of the Empire's fleet, proving that Earth could see through their stealth systems, had mapped their weaknesses, and was ready for battle. In the meeting room, the military leaders waited in silence. They had shown their hand, revealed secrets kept hidden for decades. Now they would see if the Empire was wise enough to listen. And now, Thomas said quietly, we wait for their response, but we'll be ready either way. The next move belonged to the Empire, but humanity's warning had been delivered. They had been told to run. Whether they listened or not would determine the fate of two civilizations. The Empire's response came exactly at the 48-hour mark, but not in the form of words. Their ships suddenly accelerated toward Earth, weapons charging with bright purple energy. High Commander Vex had made his choice. In the command center, Admiral Thomas watched calmly as the enemy fleet approached. Status of civilian evacuation. All major cities have moved their populations to the underground shelters, Colonel Rivers reported. Operation Dark Shield is complete. We're ready, sir. The Empire's ships entered firing range. Their energy weapons lit up the space around Earth, sending massive bolts of destruction toward major cities. This was their standard tactic: strike fear into the primitive species by destroying their largest population centers. But something unexpected happened. The purple energy beams hit invisible barriers 20 miles above each city. The barriers didn't just block the attacks, they absorbed them. Decades of studying light and energy had given humanity the ability to capture and redirect enemy fire. They've taken the bait, Thomas announced. All defense stations, execute Protocol Omega. Across Earth's orbit, what the Empire had dismissed as communication satellites suddenly transformed. Panels shifted, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden in plain sight. Every weather monitoring station, every GPS satellite, every piece of space debris larger than a car, all of them were part of Earth's defense network. The Empire's ships found themselves caught in a crossfire of their own energy, redirected back at them with devastating accuracy. 20 of their vessels exploded before they could raise their shields. Sir, Baker called out, we're receiving a transmission from High Commander Vex. Put it through, Thomas ordered. Let's hear what they have to say now. What is this trickery? Vex's voice boomed through the command center, his translated words carrying a mix of rage and shock. You dare use our own weapons against us? We warned you, Thomas replied simply. And that was just our first line of defense. Would you like to see the second? Without waiting for a response, he gave the signal. The moon, which had been silent and seemingly dead, suddenly came alive. Hidden doors opened in its craters, revealing massive gun batteries that had been built inside the natural formations. The first volley from these lunar cannons cut through the Empire's fleet like paper, their quantum-tipped rounds ignoring enemy shields completely. Impossible, Vex shouted. Your species is pre-FTL. You cannot have this technology. We never said we couldn't travel faster than light, Thomas corrected him. We simply chose not to reveal everything we can do. Speaking of revelations, he nodded to Dr. Wells, who pressed a sequence of buttons. Across the solar system, every asteroid mining operation transformed. What had appeared to be simple mining rigs turned into heavily armed battle stations. They had been placed there years ago, waiting for this moment. The Empire's fleet found itself surrounded. Their neat formation broke apart as ships tried to retreat in different directions. But humanity's weapons were faster. Another 30 ships disappeared in balls of fire before Vex could reorganize his forces. Last chance, Commander Vex, Thomas announced. Retreat now, and we'll let you leave with what remains of your fleet. Stay, and we'll be forced to show you even more of what humanity can do. The Empire's response was predictable. Their remaining ships formed a tight battle group and launched a massive combined attack on Earth. Every weapon they had fired at once, creating a storm of energy that lit up space like a new sun. Thomas shook his head sadly. They never learn. Dr. Wells, activate the quantum mirrors. Around Earth, invisible fields of quantum-entangled particles sprang to life. The Empire's massive attack hit these fields and simply vanished. Then, a heartbeat later, it reappeared behind their own fleet. The last thing High Commander Vex saw before his shield generators overloaded was his own attack rushing back toward him. amplified by human technology he couldn't understand. "Begin counterattack," Thomas ordered as the Empire's ships burned. "Show them everything we've got. It's time to take this fight to them." The war had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The Empire's reinforcement fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, expecting to find Earth in ruins. Instead, they found only debris from their first attack force and an apparently empty system. All signs of human defense systems had vanished. On the bridge of his command ship, the Empire's fleet master looked at the sensor readings with confusion. "Where are they hiding?" His answer came in the form of a massive explosion that consumed 20 ships at the rear of his fleet. By the time he turned to look, there was nothing there, just empty space and floating debris. In Earth's hidden command center, Captain Marcus grinned at his tactical display. "Hit and run successful, Admiral. The stealth systems are working perfectly." Admiral Thomas nodded, watching as the dots representing their ships vanished again into the background of space. What looked like regular transport ships had been modified with advanced cloaking technology. They could strike and disappear before the Empire even knew what hit them. "Status of Operation Ghost?" Thomas asked. Colonel Rivers brought up a new display. "All mining ships are in position. The Empire thinks they're just civilian vessels fleeing the battle." He paused, smiling. "They have no idea each one is carrying enough firepower to destroy a battleship." The plan was working perfectly. While the Empire's fleet looked for traditional military targets, humanity's real strength lay in its ability to turn anything into a weapon. Every asteroid mining ship was actually a heavily armed warship in disguise. Every space station had hidden weapon systems. Even the emergency rescue vessels carried powerful weapons behind their innocent-looking hulls. "Sir," Baker called out, "the Empire is starting their standard search pattern. They're falling right into our trap." The Empire's ships spread out in a wide formation, following their usual tactics for finding hidden enemies. They had used this same pattern to hunt down and destroy the military forces of 100 other worlds. But humans weren't like the others. "Begin Phase 2, Thomas ordered. Across the solar system, seemingly dead satellites suddenly came to life. But instead of attacking, they released clouds of tiny objects. Space junk, the Empire thought. Their sensors ignored the small pieces of debris as harmless. That was their second mistake. Each piece of junk was actually a miniature weapon platform, guided by advanced AI. They attached themselves to the Empire's ships, waiting for the signal. "Sir," Marcus reported, "the nano-platforms are in place. 70% of their fleet is infected." Thomas nodded. "Send the signal." All at once, thousands of tiny explosions ripped through the Empire's shields. The nano-platforms weren't powerful enough to destroy the ships, but they didn't need to be. They just had to create gaps in the shields. "All disguised mining ships, attack now," Thomas commanded. The innocent-looking mining ships dropped their cover, revealing their true nature. They fired through the gaps in the Empire's shields, their quantum weapons finding vital spots with surgical precision. The Empire's fleet broke formation, trying to regroup. But everywhere they turned, they found another trap. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from asteroids. Cloaked ships appeared out of nowhere, fired, and vanished again. "They're trying to retreat to the edge of the system," Rivers reported. "Right where we want them." At the solar system's edge, more of humanity's ships waited in hiding. What the Empire thought was empty space was actually full of quantum mines, invisible to their sensors. "They're in the kill zone," Marcus announced. "Permission to spring the final trap." Thomas watched as the Empire's ships rushed toward their doom. "Do it." The quantum mines activated all at once, creating a web of energy that trapped the Empire's ships. Then the hidden fleet opened fire from all directions. In his command ship, the fleet master watched in horror as his forces were torn apart by an enemy he couldn't even see properly. "How?" he transmitted. "How is this possible?" "We tried to warn you," Thomas replied calmly. We've spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Did you think we'd fight you in the way you expected? That's not how humans wage war. As the last of the Empire's Second Fleet burned, Thomas turned to his staff. Prepare for Phase 3. It's time to take the fight to their territory. The Empire was about to learn why humans had warned them to run, and why they should have listened. In the Imperial Palace on the Empire's capital world, High Commander Vex stood before the Council of Elders, his usual confidence shattered. The massive holographic displays around him showed the destruction of not one, but 2 Imperial fleets. How? The First Elder demanded, his translated voice sharp with anger. How did a pre-FTL species destroy our best ships? Vex replayed the battle footage again. The human ships appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible accuracy, and vanished again. Their weapons ignored shields that had protected Empire ships for 1,000 years. Even their smallest devices carried devastating power. We made a mistake, Vex admitted, the words burning in his throat. The humans weren't primitive at all. They were hiding their true capabilities. The Second Elder leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Explain. Look at this, Vex said, bringing up new data. Every time we thought we understood their technology level, they revealed something new. Their weapons, their shields, their tactics, they're all beyond what we thought possible. A junior officer rushed into the chamber, breaking all protocol. High Commander. Emergency report from the border stations. Speak, Vex ordered, grateful for any interruption. 3 more outposts have gone silent. No distress calls, no signs of battle. They're just gone. And sir, we found this attached to the last transmission. The officer handed over a data crystal. When Vex played it, Admiral Thomas's calm face appeared above the council table. By now you've realized that destroying your fleets was just the beginning. We warned you to run. You didn't listen. Now we're coming to show you exactly why that warning was mercy. The message continued, showing footage of massive human ships emerging from hidden shipyards throughout their solar system. Each one carried weapons that could crack planets. Behind them, more ships appeared. Weapons platforms disguised as cargo vessels, stealth ships that could slip past any defense, and things the Empire had no words to describe. Their entire civilization, the Third Elder whispered, everything we saw, it was all a mask. Yes, Vex agreed, his voice hollow. They showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. While we thought they were barely managing spaceflight within their system, they were building an army. While we thought their colonies were primitive outposts, they were military bases. Every piece of technology we dismissed as basic was hiding something far more dangerous. New alerts flashed across the displays. More border stations had gone silent. The humans were advancing faster than any fleet should be able to move, using technology that made no sense to Imperial scientists. Do we have any way to stop them? The First Elder asked, real fear in his voice for the first time in centuries. Vex shook his head slowly. Our standard tactics are useless. They know all our strategies. They've studied us while hiding their own capabilities. They fight like nothing we've ever seen. They don't follow any of the rules of warfare we know. How? The Second Elder demanded. How did they advance so far without us knowing? Because, Vex realized, they've spent their entire history fighting themselves. Every weapon, every tactic, every technological advancement, it all came from centuries of warfare. While we conquered peaceful worlds, they were perfecting the art of war against equals. And now, another alert sounded. Human ships had been detected near the core worlds. Somehow, they had bypassed the Empire's strongest defenses. They warned us, Vex said quietly. They told us to run, not because they were afraid, but because they knew what would happen if we forced them to fight. And we didn't listen. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years through superior military power. But now they faced an enemy who had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, who had hidden their true strength until the perfect moment, and who fought in ways that made no sense to imperial military doctrine. "Send the order," the first elder commanded. "All fleets are to retreat and defend the core worlds. We must find a way to survive what's coming." But looking at the advancing human forces, Vex wondered if it was already too late. Operation Thunderstrike began at exactly midnight Earth time. Across the galaxy, human ships emerged from stealth mode all at once. The Empire's sensors lit up with thousands of targets that hadn't been there a second before. In Earth's mobile command center, now stationed near the Empire's borders, Admiral Thomas watched the operation unfold. "All strike teams report ready," Colonel Rivers announced. "The Empire's forces are exactly where we predicted they would be." "They're still following their standard defense protocols," Captain Marcus added, pointing to the tactical display. "Just like they have for the last 1,000 years. Thomas nodded. "Begin Phase 1. Show them what humanity can really do." The first wave of attacks didn't target military installations or fleet concentrations. Instead, human ships appeared inside the Empire's supposedly impenetrable defensive networks. They bypassed every security measure using technology that made Empire scientists' heads spin. "Sir, the lunar bases are in position," Dr. Wells reported. What the Empire didn't know was that humans had built massive weapons platforms inside artificial moons and asteroids, then tugged them into position using quantum drives. These bases had been hiding in plain sight for weeks, disguised as natural satellites. "Launch the planet crackers," Thomas ordered. From these fake moons, enormous beams of energy shot out, not at planets, but at the Empire's orbital defense platforms. The weapons didn't destroy their targets. They simply shut them down, using targeted electromagnetic pulses that even Empire shields couldn't stop. "Civilian transport fleet, you have a go," Thomas commanded. What the Empire had dismissed as refugee ships suddenly transformed. Hidden panels slid away, revealing weapon systems that had been perfectly concealed. These ships had been purposely designed to look primitive and harmless. Now they showed their true nature. In the Imperial Palace, alarms blared as defense system after defense system went dark. High Commander Vex watched in horror as the humans systematically dismantled the Empire's carefully built defenses. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our shields are the strongest in the galaxy." "Sir," an officer reported, voice shaking, "they're not breaking through our shields. They're simply ignoring them. Their weapons pass through as if the shields don't exist." On the tactical displays, more human ships appeared. They had been there all along, hiding in ways the Empire's sensors couldn't detect. Now they struck with surgical precision, targeting exactly the right weak points in the Empire's defenses. "Another human ship requesting communication," an officer announced. Thomas's face appeared on the Empire's screens again. "Your defenses are down. Your fleets are scattered. We could destroy your capital world right now if we wanted to." He paused, letting that sink in. "But that's not why we're here." In Earth's command center, Thomas continued his message. "We're offering you one last chance. Not because we can't win. We've already won. We're offering it because despite everything you've done, we still prefer peace to war." To demonstrate his point, he ordered several human ships to reveal themselves right next to the Empire's palace. They had been there for days, weapons trained on the Empire's leadership, completely undetected. "Your civilization has ruled through fear for 1,000 years, Thomas said. "You've never faced an enemy who could fight back, who could not just match your technology, but exceed it. Now you have a choice: adapt and survive, or continue this war and face the consequences." To emphasize his words, more human ships decloaked across the Empire's territory. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city, and they had been patiently waiting in position, invisible and unstoppable. "The next move is yours," Thomas concluded. "But remember, what you've seen today is still only a fraction of what humanity can do. We've been holding back, hoping you would understand. Don't make us show you everything we're capable of." As his image faded from the Empire's screens, the human ships remained in position, a silent reminder that the Empire's reign of unchallenged military superiority was over. The great hall of the Imperial Palace had never been so quiet. Where once the Empire's leaders had lounged in supreme confidence, they now sat in stunned silence. Before them, holograms showed the complete breakdown of their military power across the galaxy. "The outer systems are declaring independence," an aide reported, his voice shaking. They say if we were defeated so easily by the humans, we no longer deserve to rule." High Commander Vex stood alone before the Council of Elders, his magnificent uniform now seeming more like a costume than a symbol of power. "We have no choice," he said, his voice hollow. "The humans have proven they could destroy us at any moment. They've had the ability to strike our homeworld for weeks." The first elder rose slowly from his throne. For the first time in the Empire's history, he spoke not as a supreme ruler, but as the leader of a defeated power. "Bring up the human commander." Admiral Thomas's image appeared in the center of the hall. He stood calmly, hands clasped behind his back, waiting patiently as he had been for weeks. "We," the first elder paused, the word strange in his mouth, "we wish to discuss terms of peace." In Earth's command center, Thomas nodded. "We're glad you've chosen wisdom over pride. Our terms are simple. The Empire will survive, but it must change." The terms were displayed for all to see. The Empire would become a confederation, with each world given the right to self-govern. The central authority would remain, but as a coordinator rather than a ruler. Most importantly, the Empire would have to abandon its policy of forcing primitive worlds to submit. "This is outrageous," one of the younger elders shouted. "We cannot." He fell silent as another human ship decloaked directly outside the palace windows, its weapons powered up, not as a threat, but as a reminder. "Remove High Commander Vex from his position," the first elder ordered. "His arrogance brought us to this point. We will not repeat his mistakes." Vex didn't resist as guards led him away. He had finally understood what the humans had tried to tell him from the beginning. True strength lay not in domination, but in wisdom. As the hours passed, more changes swept through the Empire. The rigid military hierarchy that had ruled for 1,000 years began to crack. Young officers who had seen the humans' superior tactics were promoted. Scientists who had been ignored for suggesting new ideas were suddenly in high demand. "The peace treaty is ready for signature," Colonel Rivers reported to Thomas. "All major systems have agreed to the terms." Thomas nodded, but his expression remained serious. "And the tracking devices?" "Still in place," Marcus confirmed. "Every ship we let them keep, every defense system we didn't destroy, all tagged with quantum markers. If they ever try to rebuild their empire of conquest." "They won't," Thomas said firmly. "They've learned their lesson. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemy, but in helping them become something better." Across the galaxy, the news spread. The mighty empire had been humbled not by brute force, but by a species that had tried to warn them away from war. Humanity emerged not as conquerors, but as guardians of a new order. In the following months, human diplomatic ships visited worlds that had suffered under the Empire's rule. They brought not demands of submission, but offers of alliance and trade. Earth's technology, no longer hidden, became a force for progress rather than destruction. "Sir," Baker called out one day, "we're receiving requests from across the galaxy. Other worlds want to learn from us. Not just our technology, but our ideas, our way of thinking." Thomas smiled. "Then we'll teach them. We'll show them why diversity of thought, creativity, and adaptation are more powerful than rigid control. We'll show them what humanity really stands for." The Empire's fall marked not an ending, but a beginning. Humanity had proved that intelligence and restraint could be greater weapons than any warship. They had warned the Empire to run, and when that warning was ignored, They had changed the galaxy forever. And somewhere in a quiet cell, High Commander Vex finally understood the full meaning of humanity's warning. They hadn't told the Empire to run out of fear, but out of mercy. Because sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to.